And we have returned for episode 7 or 8 of Raiders of the Past podcast. I am Luke Caverns, joined today by my lovely host, Johanna James. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so good. It's Monday, and here we are,
Yep.
opposite sides of the world, but together, uh, live on the internet and live with you guys because we do Raiders of the Past podcast live every time. So mistakes and all, we're just gonna all like wobble through together. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Yeah, we are slowly closing in on having a normal, standard set schedule. Popping in on Monday in the middle of the day in the US is probably what we're going to try to shoot for because it is well accommodating to my schedule as well as Johanna's. But we just have to, we got to build up like consistency. And I have been working my day job, and today is my first day as a jobless degenerate working for myself. So I need an applause button
Me
over here.
too.
But yeah, so we're working on mm, giving Raiders a normal set schedule, and that's something that we're going to be talking about here pretty soon. We're thinking it's probably just going to be first Monday of every month, and then as
Yep.
it continues to grow, maybe more often than that, like maybe every other week or something. But it'll just grow naturally, and hopefully next episode we will have an animated intro. We'll have some sound effects, stuff like that. We're slowly but
Yep.
surely becoming an official
Official
podcast.
podcast.
Yeah. So
by
today,
episode 10, by episode 10, we'll get there.
yeah. So today I'm doing a little bit of a recap on my visit to the Sacred Valley of Peru and some of the
Mhm.
megalithic stoneworks that I documented there. But before we get there, Johanna, what have you been up to since last time we spoke?
I have been, well, recovering from my epic journey around the world to see Easter Island. And then well, I've got some very exciting things happening next week. So we have got special permission to go to the Petri Museum in London, which is where a lot of uh, Egypt artifacts are still kept from the Victorian, a lot of Petri went in the Victorian times and got a load of stuff, and including the very famous core sample that is in a lot of contention with people who follow like ancient lost technology. It's the core sample that Christopher Dunn studied and talks about a lot, and the ancient vases. So we've got special permission. They've actually shut the museum, and a small group of us, including the snakes from Brother of the Serpent, Carl and Russ, we get to go and we get to look at the core sample and the vases. And I think as well, some of them might be able to get scanned. I'm not running the trip, so I'm just joining along like
Yeah.
a friend happy to be there. But so I'm excited to go and see that and get like the private viewing.
Have you watched the well, you probably haven't. It just came out today, but Flint Dibble was just on Danny Jones' podcast today, and
Oh,
they
really?
have like a 30-minute section where they talk about Matt Bell's vases. And
No, I haven't seen that.
yeah. So it's pretty interesting. I won't get too much into it and deviate off of it. But
Was he so is he arguing he's arguing that it's all like not spectacular and totally
yeah,
achievable
yeah, yeah,
by
yeah.
stone
So
tools?
Yeah, so they're having some, I don't know, I guess they're having a conversation about Graham Hancock, and Danny goes, "All right, can we talk about these?" And so he pulls out the vase, and Flint, kind of rolls his eyes or whatever, and looks up, and he's like, "Oh, these are from the guys who say that all archaeologists are wrong," and and Danny says something along the lines of, well, so there's the vase scan project team that's scanning the vases, and they're seeing how they're hyper accurate on the inside and that the measurements are precise. And Flint Dibble is like, yeah, well, I'm just going to say right now I disagree with all of that. And for anybody
Disagree.
watching, you should, yeah, for anybody watching, it's interesting because he says that he's not, he blatantly clarifies at the beginning his disclaimer, that he's not an expert in Egyptology or the vases, but like at every turn, every thing that Danny says that's so miraculous about the vases, he just shoots Danny down. So, um,
But does he shoot it down like with science, or is he shooting it down because it's a weird thing to caveat? I don't agree
mhm,
with today's team because they don't like my friends. It's like that's irrelevant. I don't care who likes. I don't care who likes who or who found what. But like it, it's a pretty incredible thing to say.
mhm,
Wow, we don't see this type of mathematics turn up in any other ancient object so far
no,
that we've studied, and we're scanning them. This is what the computers are finding. They're finding radiuses that just we can't account for that in any other tool work.
yeah,
And just to go, nah, it just it doesn't feel. I just see here, Dibble isn't the sharpest marshmallow. I don't feel like it's the most. I don't know if you had money and you had to put money on one side or the other. I found it really incredible that people can just poo-poo it without really coming to the table with like, and here's for why, and this is
yeah,
the reason why that is why these computers are showing these what was it that it's called, like a reverse radius, what
mhm.
some of these things are doing, which is like it's incredible. I don't know. And until someone can really accurately explain to me why it's not insane, or why, or someone make a vase then.
Well,
Show
yeah, so
you can do it, like, easily. Show you can do it, and
yeah,
then I'll
so
shut up.
so Flint he does bring up, he says, there's this YouTube channel out there called Scientists Against Myths,
And they've
and
made one.
they tried to recreate a vase, but it's a vase that's it's not like
What, with the
it's not
handles? Yeah. Oh, yes, the one we got at
so
Cosmic Grain.
it's not like this. It's not like Matt's vase. They make a vase that's super super narrow, and it doesn't have a lot of curve, and the inside wasn't even hollow. That's what Scientists Against Myth was able to make, and it's like cylindrical basically, and it's extremely rough. And so Danny was like, he said, yeah, I watched that video. That vase is horrible. It's nothing like the real vases. And Flint has an okay response to that. He says, well, the guys who were making the vases. Oh, by the way, I should say it took them 2 years to make a vase that was a horrible replication
2
of this.
years?
It took them
Oh,
2 years to make it out of granite or granodiorite. Um,
no,
and
no.
uh, and so Flint says he's like, well, you should also remember that modern people trying to learn how to recreate them don't have generations of knowledge going into it, because most people who are stonemasons, your dad was a stonemason, and his dad and his dad and his dad. So you have 1,000 years of expertise lined up before you make your first vase, whatever. But I don't mean to hijack our episode about this, but everybody
No, no,
should
no.
go watch it.
It's a good intro. Okay, but to be fair, okay, Flint Dibble, like I said, he's not an Egyptologist. He's not studied the vases. He's not also, he doesn't know about. He's not an expert in the scanning systems that are
Yeah.
giving this data. But who are experts are Egyptian indigenous stonemasons. And so when
Hmm.
I was in Egypt, there's this
Mm.
amazing place in Aswan where they make all of the alabaster stone vases, and you can see them. They show outside. They do this big kind of show on how they carve and stone, and like how they make them. And you can see it from literally like the lump of alabaster to the finished vase. And I went up to them and I showed them a picture of the pre-dynastic stuff, and I was like, great, how do you make these, like,
Mhm.
because if this is how you do that, how do you make this? And he went, no, we can't. I don't know, we can't. And like, so that was someone who's like an
Mhm.
indigenous stonemason of
Mhm.
Egypt, saw that and went, oh, we have no idea. Like, we can't make that. And I think that, I don't know, it speaks volumes if the people who are, the
Yeah.
stonemason experts are saying, not a clue, that's beyond our capabilities. Like, whoever made that that was so different to what we do now. That is so different to the alabaster
Yeah.
stuff that you see. Then okay, cool. But like, yeah. Anyway, it's we
Yeah.
could
Well,
talk all day on the vases, but
yeah. If you guys want to do some base talk later, I'm thinking tonight. It's probably gonna be super late for you, Johanna, but we could do it. I'm gonna go back and watch that like 20-minute segment on Matt Bell on live.
yeah,
and
I need
talk
to
to
watch
people.
it.
Um,
Yeah.
so anyways,
But
everybody.
today's episode is all
Yeah,
about, because you just got back from Peru, and I'm going to live vicariously through you, and all your amazing photos. You're so good at taking photos when you go somewhere. I'm really rubbish at it. I look with my eyes and I get excited and I film, but I forget to take really good, high quality photos. And then now we can look through them. It's like a great
yeah.
slideshow.
It's kind of bittersweet. I mean, I know you know this when you travel places. You're so fortunate to be able to go there, but yet you got to work while you're there. You know,
Mm,
it's not just going there for necessarily leisure. You know, you have to go there, you have to work, you have to document everything, every little detail. And that's you know, that's tiring while you're there. And it kind of pulls you away from the experience, you know, because I'm standing there at Machu Picchu so worried about getting every single photo, and I obsess over this and I just want to like soak it all up. But I know one day the time will come where I just go to Machu Picchu just to enjoy it. Go to
yeah.
Sacsayhuaman just to enjoy it. But I'm there to work for now. But so gosh, where do I start? So Dr. Barnhart, some people have seen him on Lex Friedman recently. He was on Lex Friedman's podcast for like 4 hours talking about the Maya, the Aztecs, the Inca. Dr. Barnhart is my professor. He's my mentor. He
Hmm.
took me on a trip to the Sacred Valley of Peru. So you have all kinds of stuff in Peru. You have the Nazca lines, you have the Palpa lines, you have the Paracas skulls, you have Chavin de Huantar, you have um, the name is escaping me, but it's the city on the north side of Lake Titicaca, basically on the other side of Tiwanaku,
Hmm.
Pucara. That's what it's called. So you have all these cool places, but then you have the Sacred Valley of Peru. And that's where the Inca and then the pre-Inca kingdom of Cusco was. And then there were people living there before them, but we don't know who those people were. Um, uh, so anyways, so that's where we were, was in the Sacred Valley. All the stuff I mentioned before, we did not go there. One day I'll go. And
Hmm.
so I guess I should give an overview. The way that the Western world found out about the Sacred Valley was after Cortez conquered. So you have Columbus in 1492. He lands in the Bahamas. They take over all of the Caribbean in the subsequent 3 decades. And then in 1519, Cortez launches his expedition down through the Yucatan Peninsula to the capital city of the Aztec world called Tenochtitlan. He
Hmm.
conquers Tenochtitlan, and then one of his successors, Pizarro, is sent down to explore the Americas further. So Pizarro is basically on the west side of Mexico. Um, well, I should say the conquistadors, they're looking for a few things. They're looking for land with rich resources. Really, they're looking for gold, because gold is what is deemed valuable all around the ancient world. Everybody recognized its value, so they're looking for gold. They're looking for wealth to send back to Spain. So, um, as they're in Tenochtitlan, they see the gold wealth that the Aztecs have. And as they go further in West Mexico to the Pacific coast, they see all of the wealth and gold that Western Mexican people had. This is I'm trying to think of one of the cities, one of the cultures that are there. It's very similar to Tenochtitlan, but I'm blanking on it right now. But it's not something. West Mexico is not something that I study. But they see the gold wealth that the Western Mexican cultures had, and they start asking people, "Well, where did you get this?" Because they're not able to find the mines for this gold, and
Mm.
essentially through interpreters, they end up hearing that it's coming from traders off of the coast, people who are sailing up from somewhere, some distant land in the south, and bringing gold to Western Mexican cultures. So what they do is they just they build new ships. The Spanish do. They hop on those ships and they sail down through the tail of Mexico, Central America, down to South
Hmm.
America. So this is the discovery of South America. These are Pizarro's expeditions. So he ends up discovering the Inca realm, and the Inca have conquered all of Peru and Ecuador, and they're a little bit in Colombia. And as they hit Ecuador, they keep going south, and eventually they make their way to the navel of the Inca world, the center of the Inca universe, which is Cusco. Long story short, they end up finding the Inca world basically at its height. It was the most successful empire. I should say definitely the most successful empire in the Americas. Some argue in the entire world. They're one of the only empires that we know of that did not have slave labor or did not have slavery to a degree that the Aztec Empire or the Roman Empire or even the Egyptian Empire did.
Mm-hmm.
They fed 20 million people living across Peru or the western side of South America. They fed 20 million people from inside the Sacred Valley. That's where I was at. One thing that we're gonna talk about this today, but another thing I want to emphasize is there's something that I didn't expect to blow me away when I was in Peru. I knew that I was going to see the biggest megaliths I've ever seen in my life, which I'm gonna show in a minute. There's a site at the top of Machu Picchu. There's one temple little complex area at Machu Picchu that has the biggest man-made megalithic granite blocks in the entire world, other than the Osirion. So that's really interesting.
Bigger than Baalbek.
Well, I think Baalbek is limestone. Limestone
right, there we go.
or
Granite block, she said. There we are.
Yeah. Just granite.
Just testing you, Luke.
yeah. Well, and I mean, I don't have to say this to you, but for people watching, granite is not easy to carve. It's not easy to move. It's super dense.
Yeah.
It's super heavy.
It's 50% quartz crystal. It's like
yeah.
Super
and so that's why
special.
I emphasize just as far as granite. Now there are like in Baalbek, those are huge limestone blocks. So that I want to say they weigh. I think the pregnant woman is like 1,200 tons or 1,400 tons.
It's well over 1,000. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I knew all of that was going to impress me, and it did. And it's like mind-boggling just to look at. Your eyes, even when you're looking at it in person, you can't really grasp how big this is. But what really blew me away is when I was taking the train through the Sacred Valley and when I was riding on the bus through the Sacred Valley, every single mountain from the bottom all the way to the top in the Sacred Valley is terraced and turned into a farm. Like imagine, let's see. Imagine you are driving through the Swiss Alps. That's near you. Imagine you are looking at all of these mountains from one side to the other, bottom to the top, stone terracing. They're separated by about 5 or 6 feet from the bottom all the way to the top across the entire mountain range. That absolutely blew me away. And so they had these gigantic farms that were feeding people on every single side of Peru. So I saw that, and that alone, it was just like we would just drive forever and I would never see the end of this terracing. So I mean, that just,
it's like extreme farming. Like
it had to be. It was just insane. And I mean, these were not big people farming these terraces. These are people who are, had to be average like 5.5 feet tall or something.
Imagine being the commissioned builder of the wall at the top. Be like, yeah, could you build me a wall? Yeah, great. Megalithic blocks right at the top of the mountain. You'd be like,
oh my gosh, totally insane. Here, I will actually.
Wait,
now that you say that,
Luke, just a little 101 for anybody who's not that hot on ancient Peru. Just timeline wise, when were the Incas? And when were the Incas? Who was before them? Because when we're talking about the stone, I know that there's a lot of layering, and people label that and they go, "Oh, that's Inca, that's Mayan, that's what's the order and what's the timeline?" So that we're all on the same page. Thank you.
Yeah. So the Inca Empire, as far as we know from people who spoke to the Inca when they arrived in Peru. The Inca Empire ended. I want to say it's either 1532 or it's 1536. There's a time where they're conquered by the Spanish. Um, it began sometime at the end of the 1300s. So it lasts about 150 years. It lasts about the same amount of time that the Aztec Empire does, almost exactly. Before the Inca Empire, so let's say ending sometime around the late 1300s, you have what's called the Kingdom of Cusco. And the Kingdom of Cusco is the predecessor to the Inca Empire. They are the kingdom gets so powerful that they just take over all of Peru. And we don't really know exactly when that begins, but I think it would be safe to say at least a couple hundred years before. So you're like in the 1100s AD now,
Mhm,
maybe around
mhm.
1000 AD. Um, but then as you go back further, it kind of becomes very foggy in the Sacred Valley. We know that people were always living there, but it doesn't really seem like they had a unified kingdom necessarily. For a large period of time, they are conquered by the Wari, which is first millennia AD. Um, and then if you go back before the Wari, well, you're moving into different areas of ancient Peru. There's a lot of different cultures, but just for the Inca, where I was at in the Sacred Valley, once you go back beyond 1000 AD, it starts to get very, very blurry, and we don't
Right.
know a lot about these people. Um,
So Inca are the oldest established, and then you go Inca Maya. Is that the
uh,
way the order? I'm not hot on the order. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, no. So the Maya, they're actually in Mexico. So the Maya,
Right.
as far as we know, the Maya and the Inca did not. Well,
Meat.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that they did.
Yeah.
I'm positive that they did. But we just don't have, an ample amount of evidence for that. We have so you have just explaining the geography for everybody. So you have the Maya in the Yucatan Peninsula,
Mhm.
Central America, but Mexico, in the Yucatan, all the way down through Guatemala. So that area of Central America, Mexico, southern southern Mexico, Central America,
Mhm.
Mesoamerica. There's a lot of different terms. So that's
Maya.
here. And then you have Central America, and then where Central America connects to South America. So two different continents. But they do exist roughly around the same time. I mean, the Maya are already on their way out by the time that the Inca Empire gets started. The Maya have already fallen. The cities are falling apart, and the Aztecs are taking over. So, Aztecs are also in Mexico, Mexico City to be exact. And so they all live around the same time period. I would say that the leaders probably had a vague idea that there were big civilizations far away and that materials from those civilizations would be traded by boats up, near their city. But as far as direct contact, we don't have evidence for it, but it's probably pretty likely that they did. Um, anyways, so so that we have like 1,000 years of a history in the Sacred Valley. This is where these gigantic megalithic stoneworks are found, like Sacsayhuaman. I know when I show some pictures, I know you'll be familiar with this. Is these gigantic walls with like 20-foot tall blocks and
Yeah.
10-foot wide blocks, and those are made out of limestone and basalt. Um, but then in the city of Cusco, you have this imperialistic, almost perfectly rectangular style of architecture called imperial style.
Mhm.
And then at Machu Picchu, you have everything. You have like 7 different types um, of stone masonry going on there. And so, one of the controversies, I guess that exists right now is that people look at this Inca stonework and they think, well, how do these people with primitive stone tools and only a little bit of metallurgy construct these huge megaliths? And you have conflicting reports among Spanish conquistadors interacting with the Inca people. So one um, one writing from Cieza de Leon, he says that he saw Inca stonemasons with metal hand tools, and he says somehow with metal hand tools and an unknown unknown centuries of ancient knowledge of stonemasonry were able to cut and carve these perfectly, I say perfectly, but they're semi-symmetrical blocks that are found throughout the city of Cusco. So he saw Inca people doing that with his own eyes and wrote it down. However, those imperial style blocks are different from the megalithic, gargantuan, cyclopean blocks that you see literally up the hill from Cusco. Like if you're in ancient times, if you were standing in the center of Cusco and you looked up the hill, you'd be able to see Sacsayhuaman. Those blocks are different. And there's an account written in the royal commentary of the conquest of the Incas that a Spaniard saw some Inca people up on top of the hill trying to move the stones, those big stones, and they couldn't do it. So it's you have these conflicting ideas.
Okay,
And
so just so I'm following you,
mm,
Inca are supposed to be the oldest known civilization in the area. They're supposed to be the OGs, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
they're
like established civilization,
like
yes.
established the ones in the
Mhm,
timeline that is like the orthodox timeline. So the
mhm,
Inca is supposed to be the oldest one. So therefore, the Inca made the big mama
mhm.
stones because they are the oldest stones found are the biggest, right? It goes biggest,
Yep.
big to small when they're stacked. So 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 the oldest ones, and we're talking. You said what, like 1000 AD? No
Well,
older.
they think yeah. I mean, they think that the textbooks would say probably no older than 800 years old for this architecture. Yeah.
And there's no prototype of it, so it's biggest to smallest. So they just started out being like, do you know what, let's do this 50 tons. Like they didn't progress to getting bigger. They just right off the bat, 1000 AD made massive stones, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's tough to, yeah, it's tough to say. So the predecessor to the Inca Empire would be the Wari Empire. Now, the
Worry.
Wari are a little bit more north of the Sacred Valley, I believe. And you look at their cities, and it's these small red stones, the stones that are about this big. I mean, just nothing compared to what you see in the Inca world. And it's basically, bricks and mortar, rubble and mortar construction. So the Inca definitely didn't get their inspiration of architecture from the Wari. What they think they got their inspiration from was Tiwanaku, where you also see these huge andesite and basalt megalithic stones. The H blocks and the ones that
Mhm.
look like they have the little T symbols that are almost looks like you're going into some kind of portal or something on their stonework. They think that the Inca were inspired by Tiwanaku and that they hired stonemasons who knew how to do what was done at Tiwanaku, or they went there and they learned how to, I don't know. They're just speculating as to how this was done, but they think that it was
Yeah.
definitely influenced by Tiwanaku. But no, as far as we know, the megalithic stonework at Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo, Pisac, Cusco, and Sacsayhuaman don't have Inca prototypes that when they did it the first time, it was done the first time, as far as we know. Yeah, so that's basically it. The hard and fast history is that
Mhm.
the Inca did this around 600 to 1,000 years ago, and that there was not really an established civilization in the area before that. Perhaps the Wari ruled over the area, but none of those are attributed to the Wari, which would have been 1500, only just 1,500 years ago. So that's the hard and fast history for the Sacred Valley.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Good,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it it is, unless you're like super into this area, it can be confusing over, and yeah, and people confuse things with Mexico, and like, so
Mhm.
the oldest thing there is the Wari, then the Inca, and then so in Mexico, what's the order and the timeline of the Olmec,
Oh
Mayan,
gosh. So
Aztec?
yeah. So Mexico, we have um at least I'm a bit more well versed in Mexico. So in Mexico, it begins with this proto Olmec civilization in Guara, um, and it's this proto Olmec world. I haven't started creating heads yet, and then they move east into Veracruz, and
And what
they
timeline? What's the timeline of
yeah,
this?
yeah. So Veracruz, the earliest that we have them is San Lorenzo, Mexico, or San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan. That's their first major city, and that's somewhere around 1800 BC. Although
Right,
we know that proto Olmec goes back beyond 2000 BC.
2000
So
BC.
1800 BC, and then around 1600 BC they erect. So we think that the iconic San Lorenzo head, which is called Monument One, and then the Olmec reign. They have three different eras essentially. You have San Lorenzo, you have La Venta, and then you have Tres Zapotes, and they kind of take their capital to these three different cities through these three different eras. And by Tres Zapotes, they're starting to morph into, they're not just so isolationist Olmec anymore. They are becoming
Mhm.
more similar to the other Mesoamerican cultures around them. A perfect comparison to this would be, you know, the Olmec were so far ahead of the rest of the ancient Americas that they were just their own isolated culture standing above everyone else. Exactly the same way that we look at
Mhm.
Egypt. Egypt, those pyramids, even at their youngest date, were reigning over all of the ancient world long before the ancient world even got started. Like the Egyptians arrived and their culture had reached its peak before anyone else got started. Then, by the time Egypt begins collapsing around 900 BC, um, well, I should say around 1000 BC, when they're conquered by the Nubians, and then they're conquered by the Persians, and then Alexander the Great shows up, and then you get Hellenistic Egypt. Egypt starts to look like everyone else around the Mediterranean because everyone else is catching up and becoming powerful. The same thing is happening to the Olmecs. By the time they get to Tres Zapotes, they are starting to look, and this is around 300 BC now. So
Mhm.
we've gone from 2000, 1700 years later, that 300 BC. The Olmecs are now not only influencing everyone else, they're beginning to become influenced by everyone else because everyone else is catching up to them. As far as economically, trade, monumental architecture, religion, iconography, they're starting to be influenced. So they become what
Yep.
is called Epi-Olmec. And then somewhere after Christ, they kind of just they start sputtering out, and by 200 AD, the Olmecs are gone, and the Maya have arrived, and
Right.
uh, and so the Maya develop independently, even though we attribute the Olmec as to birthing the culture of the Maya and all the Mesoamerican cultures. The Maya kind of grew alongside the Olmec, but the Olmec kind of fall they kind of just dissipate and disappear, and the Olmec really and the Maya begin to rise. So then you have the Maya who reign for around 200 BC. They build a city called El Mirador. I'll be there in like a month. Like when I leave Egypt, I come back home for a day, and then I go to Guatemala to go to El Mirador. Um, and so El Mirador, very interesting. The three biggest pyramids, I'm sorry, the two biggest pyramids built in the Maya world are the two first pyramids that we know that they constructed. And they're out in the middle of the jungle in Guatemala.
So
That's
they
two.
just started big again from the first one's the biggest.
Yep. And Richard Hansen is the head archaeologist out there. I mean, this is like 40 miles into the middle of the jungle. He just lives out there with his team. But there's not a lot of photos of this. But at the very beginning of Maya civilization, they build the two biggest pyramids that they're ever going to build using the biggest blocks that they're ever going to use. That's the official archaeology of the Maya world.
Okay.
And Richard Hansen, who's the head archaeologist of El Mirador, he calls it just conspicuous consumption. They're a very powerful civilization, so they're using gigantic blocks just because they can. That's like the official, explanation. And so, anyways, the Maya begin there at 200 BC, and then they last a very long time. And they have their first collapse around 900 AD. So 1100 years or so go by. They have their first collapse.
So around the time the Inca are getting started, the Maya are
Yeah,
ending.
around the same time. Not that those necessarily influence each other in any way that we can see, looking
Okay.
back into the past. Um, but so the Maya begin to fall apart around 900 AD, and then they basically rebuild all civilization. There's a whole big thing you could get into about why exactly the Maya fell. And then they blossom into what we call post-classic Maya, which they come out of the lowland jungles of Guatemala and they move north into the Yucatan and they build all these new cities. And then that is at its height kind of all the way until contact. Maybe so contact begins around 1519, maybe
Right.
1510. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, from the late 1200s, the Aztecs far west in Mexico City have come down from the United States in the southwest United States and have arrived in Mexico City, which they call Tenochtitlan, established their empire, and they're now sweeping through the entire Maya world. And they were planning on launching a final assault to take out the rest of the Maya world when Cortez showed up. And so that is how that works. So Cortez shows up and then sweeps the Aztec empire all the way out of the Maya world
Uh-huh.
back to
Uh-huh.
Tenochtitlan and then conquers the Aztec Empire.
That's very similar around the time of in the English history, around 1066 in the Battle of Hastings,
Mm,
because you had Saxon, like native English people, you had Norman French people, and you had Scandinavian Vikings. And at the same time, we had a Viking invasion from the north, and at the same time, we had a Norman French invasion from the south. So there's like three parties all
interesting.
fighting each other. And the the Saxons won against the Vikings, and then any Vikings that were still alive, they were like, "Hey, do you want to buddy up and fight the French?" And they were like, "Yeah." So they kind of anyway, but that just was
Interesting.
interesting. So you've got two different people. So at the same time as the Aztecs are coming in to take over the Mayas, you've got the Cortez coming in. Hmm.
Yeah, Cortez comes and basically takes over everything. And what's interesting is the reason that the Maya could not hold a solid resistance to the Aztecs is because the Maya civilization was not an empire. People, you hear people say Mayan Empire a lot,
Mhm.
but that never existed. It was never real. They were all city states, and every single Maya city was its own kingdom with its own dynastic family, with its own history, and they had kind of loose alliances with neighboring cities, exactly the same way that Greece was set up. So in Greece, you have Athens, Thebes, um, Pella,
Mhm.
and yeah, I could go on and on and on. But they're all their own kingdoms with their own governments, and they all compete against each other and war against each other and kill each other. And every so often, you have a little empire that shows up, like you have like Athenian supremacy that comes out of Athens, and then you have Macedon. You have the kingdom of Macedon that takes over all of Greece. But they cannot put their differences aside and unite. Meanwhile, an empire just to the west of them, which to the Greeks it was Rome, to the Maya it was the Aztecs. They are fully united, and they just come through with all of their power and sweep across these city states. And what's interesting is you have in both cases you have, let's see, I'll do it here on the screen. So this is what the maps look like. You have the Maya and the
Mhm.
Greek city states here. You have the Roman and Aztec Empire here, and they just come through and sweep away these city states that are living to their east. And it's just funny how life works and how civilizations just behave largely in many of the same
So
ways.
just to make sure we're on the same page, so obviously the Mexico history goes back way into like BC,
Yep.
1000 BC, 2000 BC, but you're saying that the Peru history literally there is no stonework allowed to be made in Peru before 1000 AD. So they have no BC stonework, no BC civilizations, no BC.
So
Uh,
so so only in the Sacred Valley. The Sacred Valley, that's just one little part where the Andes connects to the Amazon on the south part of the Andes. Now, as you go into Greater Peru, the history does go back further. So you have Shavin de Huantar, which begins sometime around 1500 BC and goes to 900 BC. And so Shavin de Huantar is the first culture that we see building huge temples with megalithic
mhm,
stones, and the temples have an interior. But it's also the first time in Peru that we see religion start popping up. So um, they have this strange jaguar human god, which is similar to what the Olmecs have as well. But we think that Shavin culture actually comes from Coral Supe culture. Coral Supe culture, according to, you know, modern day archaeologists and academia, that Coral Supe culture, they are actually building the very first stone pyramids in the entire world. And their stone pyramids go back to 3500 BC. So, you know, if Saqqara in Egypt really is the oldest pyramid in Egypt, and it really is 2700 BC, like archaeologists and academics say. Archaeologists and academics are also saying that Coral Supe, they are building their pyramids some 600 to 800 years earlier. But that's not in the Sacred Valley. Maybe I should pull up a map to show what I'm talking
yeah.
about a little bit. Because it's a lot to
Let's look to the map.
digest.
Yeah, it is a lot. But yeah, okay, because I know visually, I've seen a lot of the megalithic stuff, so I can kind of recognize what's Machu Picchu, what's the walls, but
Yeah.
it's just getting the timeline in my head the right way around. Um, and also like how you get the obviously you can't date stone, so you can only
Mhm.
date when they've dug down in the pits and they've dated the human activity that's available.
Oops. Okay, so we are going to present. Let's do share screen. Window.
I just find it so crazy, like some of the big mama stuff that was made, and just so mad that that was just like plonked there the first thing, and then it was just never found again, apart from that one layer.
Yeah, so this area around Cusco,
Yeah,
that is the Sacred Valley. It's just this little area.
there we are.
Is my
Eh,
voice doing that thing as I'm moving my mouse?
a little bit.
Okay.
Every time you say Cusco, I laugh because in my head I hear the Emperor's New Groove and I'm like Cusco, the poison for Cusco, Cusco's
Yes.
poison.
So that
So
yeah, so that movie is the emperor of the Inca realm.
that
Um,
movie is historically accurate, guys. It is the most accurate representation of the history of Cusco.
so just this little area is the Sacred Valley.
Right.
But you have all of this. I'm leaving the borders on, so I don't have to move my mouse and show the borders.
Yeah,
But
100%,
the
100%.
rest of this is all of Peru, and this all has its own history as well. It's just where you
Fine.
see Cusco, that little surrounding area is the Sacred Valley. But you have lots of history throughout Peru. So let's look up Corral Supe. Let's see. I don't know why this isn't showing me my little search bar. What in the world? You guys can see that this is just eliminating my search bar.
Mhm.
Corral Supe. Let's just do this. Okay. So these right here, you can see these pyramids out here. There's I think there's dozens of these. These are what archaeologists call, whether they're right or not, the oldest pyramids on the entire planet. And my camera has stopped, but it's fine.
So far. I
So
always have to caveat with so far because
yeah. So there's lots of these, and you can see here on the screen. You can see here on the screen how many different structures are out here. So this is Corral Supe culture 3500 BC. This is,
Mhm.
as far as we know, um, officially, or when I say we, I just mean like humanity in general and what's commonly accepted. You can see how huge this city is. Um, as far as academia knows and archaeology knows, this is where the first monumental buildings in all of the ancient world are being built right here. Um,
Mhm.
and then it spreads out from here and it goes to a place called Shavin de Hontar. And the reason that they believe that this happens, so this is right here.
Mad. We can just see it on the internet. Great. Whoa, we're getting into 3D on the ground. Thanks,
Yeah.
Google. Google Earth.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the plaza at Shavin.
Woohoo!
There. That's
Wow.
the main temple of Shavin. So the reason that this was constructed, what they think is that we saw Corral Supe there on in the desert coasts of of the west part of, or the western coast of South America.
Mhm.
They think that they kept on getting destroyed by these huge cataclysmic storms called El Ninos and La Ninas, and it was just over and over and over again. And you look at it's very similar idea. Is think about people living in Florida. How many times are they going to get destroyed by earthquakes or hurricanes over and over and over again before they
Yep.
move inland? It happens, in the modern world is different, but if it was an ancient culture, eventually they would move inland so that they can survive and not have to keep rebuilding their cities. Um, this is what they think is a continuation of Corral Supe culture. So they eventually decide we can't be living on the beach anymore. We have to move high into the mountains to be able to survive these storms. But when they were at Corral Supe, they didn't have art, as far as we know. They didn't have religion, as far as we know. They didn't have. I mean, it falls under the category of art, but they didn't have, megalithic stone sculptures or stelae or anything. And so they arrive here, and all of a sudden it begins.
Wait,
And
so they
so,
didn't have religion because all these sites always go back to like religious law and religious procession and whatever. So they
well,
didn't have religion, but they made a massive, well, many massive pyramids.
yeah, yeah. Well,
What for then?
it,
If they're not for
it,
religious reasons.
yeah, it's assumed that they probably had religious beliefs, but we have just no evidence of whatever that religion really was. Um,
Mm.
Now we have evidence of religion here at Shavin because we have art that depicts the religion. And we don't really understand what the art is, but we can just see that it's there. And what's interesting is they arrive at Shavin basically fully fledged. This has turned into an ancient history of Peru lecture, but it's totally fine. It's actually necessary.
I mean, it
Um,
is. If you're going to start learning, like you need to know one end of your Aztec from your Inca. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
We need to all be on the same page before
Yeah,
we
yeah.
go off together.
I actually like that phrase. I'm going to use that. So So essentially, you have Peruvian civilization beginning down here, and
Mhm.
then it moves up here to get away from the storms. Now, what's interesting is once they arrive up here, I think, and Dr. Barnhart thinks, and it's not a commonly accepted theory among academics, that there was a civilization out here in the Amazon that was already blossoming with stone architecture. Oh, I just realized you. Okay, yeah, you guys can see my mouse. Um, there is a civilization out in the Amazon blossoming that had already been established with stone architecture, established religion, iconography, and that is based around a humanoid jaguar god. And that god also appears at Shavin de Hontar. Now, the reason that we have evidence of it at Shavin and not in the Amazon is because the Amazon eats up everything, and Shavin is in a somewhat drier area high up in the Andes where things are more easily preserved and it's much more easy to observe them thousands of years later and dig them back up. Whereas in the Amazon, nobody even knows where to look, if that makes sense.
So, question, sorry again.
Yeah, go ahead.
How old is the Amazon?
Oh boy. Well, Amazonian civilization, the earliest remnants that we might have of it
Mm-hmm.
somewhere around here. There are caves out there that are found with they would dig down into these ancient campfires, and they'd found that this same campfire spot in these caves had been used for thousands of years, and they keep going down and down and down and down and down, and studying the soot and the ash from the fire, and that goes all the way back to either 20 or 30,000 BC. So what's really strange is,
Okay.
we're taught that people came across the Bering Strait from Asia and wandered down into the Americas.
Yeah.
But what's weird is one of the oldest places we actually see evidence for it is over here.
So it's
How
more
the heck?
like they wandered up
Yeah, it's very strange, but we don't have evidence of them crossing straight over from Africa into
so
South
far.
America. Yeah, so far. But we do have evidence of them being Australasian. So coming from
Right,
around
okay.
here.
Yeah, yeah. We're looking at
It
the globe here, everybody, if you're only listening.
Yeah, yes. I'm sorry for audio listeners. It's a horrible experience. But so it's a huge mystery. Anyways, so the way it seems is that people are coming from the east coast of the Amazon, coming straight through the center of the Amazon, and then the first time we actually see evidence of their existence, as far as pottery and ceramics and religious iconography and architecture, is actually when they influence somebody else down here at Shavin de Huantar, when they appear out of the jungle and they're
Mhm.
emerging people who live or they're influencing people who live in a drier climate. Now, from here, Chavin, Peruvian civilization just begins to blossom all over the place. There's a huge timeline of all these different cultures. I mean, you have Nazca, which are down here in these deserts. I'm sorry, actually, right here. You have Nazca lines, you have the Palpa lines, you have the Paracas skulls. All of those are, around 2,000 years old ish. So they think, you can't date the Nazca lines, but you can date the bodies that are found buried in cities nearby. So, that's all that they can go off of. And then, it's about 3,000, almost, yeah, it's about 4,000 years of continuous history in Peru, all the way up to the time of the fall of the Inca. But the Inca happened to rule from this sacred valley right here.
So the massive pyramids that just popped up were
Mhm.
established, popped up, no prototype pyramids, just big old mother pyramid straight off the bat. That came from a group of people that were coming out of the depths of the Amazon. And they obviously came with that knowledge of the mega pyramids, right?
Well, we don't really know
Where they came from?
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
so I should clarify, Coral Supe, which is on that coast right here. I'll zoom
Hmm.
in. Coral Supe, which is out here.
Yep.
That so far is thought to be an independent invention by people who were living on that coast, and their construction techniques are just rubble. It's like these nets of rubble that they've tied. So they basically they have this big net made of ropes. They throw a bunch of rocks in it. They tie up the net, and then they
Oh,
stack
yeah, yeah.
those rocks together like
Yeah, yeah.
concrete
Yeah.
bags kind of. But it
I've
is
seen it today. It's a modern technique. People do it still today around the coasts. You sort of net together rocks and you
oh
build.
yeah.
I've seen it, and we do it in England.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
okay, so these massive pyramids that you were talking about, they're pyramids of big bags of rubble?
Yes, that's their construction technique. The
Right.
Peruvians don't begin using megalithic stones until they decide to leave Corral and flee up to Chavin. They then begin using megalithic stones in their construction, but they only begin using that once they're exposed. Once they get up here, that's
Yeah.
when we know that they're exposed to Amazonian culture, and that's when they start using megalithic stones. It happens at the same time.
Okay, but they had the visual idea to make the massive pyramid, even though they were doing it out of bags of
Yes.
rubble.
Yep.
But I just, in my head, I'm like, my brain's going like this, and I'm just going, I feel like if the Amazon is like super duper duper old, and you've got on the other side, we've got fire pits that go back 30,000 years. I was like, is there's some sort of like knowledge that's coming out to the coasts and being attempted to be recreated? They're going, I've seen that, let's build something like that. And then like at some point in the future, when we properly get to scan and really dig into the Amazon, and we dig down like as far as we are in Turkey and find, I'm just wondering whether we're going to find the prototype big ones that they were trying to recreate on the coast.
Yeah,
Or do you think that they genuinely just had the first idea and that was someone going, mate, I've had an idea. Let's make a really, really, really big building.
I honestly, I don't know. You know, I mean, it's one of the great mysteries.
Oh no, Luke's gone. I think Luke's gone. Are we all still here? Is it just me? Is it? Oh, he's back.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
You went and you're back, but we haven't got your camera. Thought you'd left.
Aha.
There we are. You're back.
Okay.
Great.
Sorry about that, guys. Computer
That's
problems.
all right.
For anyone watching, if you ever want to start your own live stream podcast one day, just prepare for technical issues in every single episode. There's no way to avoid it. I've come to accept this. So
okay, go on. Sorry, you keep going.
Sorry, no, you keep going.
No, just because my in my head, right? So we've got the Amazon, and then we know that the Sahara used to be an Amazon in the Sahara Green times. We're talking 10,000 years ago. And there is a really good documentary that I saw recently called The Atlantis Puzzle. I think you can watch it on Amazon. It's not yet available on YouTube. And in this documentary, they're going back and they're saying they have evidence of North African cultures, tribes, maybe potentially groups, I'm not going to say civilization, but because they're not allowed to, but you know, they've got evidence of these boats that were used in because all of North Africa was this green, lush, Amazonian type, like beautiful Greenland, and it had there was a river that ran all the way along North Africa, and obviously there was tributaries, and they knew how to boat because they could boat from one side of Africa to the other. And they were basically saying that they have evidence of boats that go back to like Atlantean time frame, like 9,000 whatever. And obviously the Nile got built up, the pre-dynastic people started flooding, like going to Egypt, because everybody lives near a water source. And so when the Sahara started to dry up, everybody like bolted to be along near the Nile and Aswan and where Cairo is and Giza. And but there's an idea saying that, well, if people came from there and then they had all this idea to build all this massive stonework, there's a chance that all the way in the center and really deep in the Sahara, in the ancient jungle Sahara, there's going to be the prototypes of all the Giza pyramids, and there's going to be prototypes of the ancient temples that you find in the 1st, 4th, 5th dynasty, because again, it just kind of like pops up. And so I'm kind of imagining the same situation happening in the ancient core of the Amazon and the Peru, and that there is a level there of culture potentially that we can't access today, because obviously it's really difficult to do archaeology in the middle of the Amazon until we get the technology that can do it from space easy. But I think when we get to deep scan the Amazon, obviously they're finding loads of cities now, but I think they're gonna find something even bigger. But it's just, that's just where my brain went to. And when you were like, oh, they just sort of popped out of nowhere, and I'm like, I'm betting if they popped out of anywhere, it's because somebody somewhere deep in the Amazon at some point knew how to do this stuff, and they were the only reason we have the ones to study today is because they're in areas that are not in the Amazon. But if we could get in there, I bet they're in there. I bet any money that they're in there.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I came to this conclusion maybe a little bit more than a year ago that I think that one of the best places that are one of the most likely culprits that is hiding an ancient lost civilization. I mean, a truly lost, uh, monumental, big civilization, and influential civilization I think, is the Amazon. I think we have the Terra Preta soil, which is this rich black soil. Okay, so as you're walking through the Amazon, you can be in these very harsh patches of, well, I mean, no, they're not patches. It's the vast majority of the natural Amazon. It is composed of these extremely harsh plants that have these 1 foot long razor thin needles that can impale your body and kill you. There's just all kinds of like
Oh
crazy.
my god.
Yeah, there's all
It's
these.
Jumanji.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very formidable jungle. However,
Mhm,
you'll reach these patches where it is growing, it's flourishing with these plants and vegetables and fruits that are edible for human beings, and it's like this garden that's made for people. Well,
mhm,
that's because it is. There were ancient Amazonians that invented this soil called terra preta, and basically, you plant it in the ground. You nourish it, and then it creates this just man-made garden in the Amazon. And there's all these different patches of it all throughout the Amazon, and these modern semi-uncontacted tribes today, um, they plant these, or they erect these temporary cities in these certain areas of the Amazon, and essentially they will go around the jungle looking for this black soil and looking for a patch of it where ancient people from thousands of years ago, we don't know how many thousands, 10, 20,000 years ago, first planted this terra preta soil. They find one of these old gardens, and then they build their little city there or their village there, and they'll stay there for a decade, use up the resources, and then leave and go find another place. And then one day that terra preta soil will grow back into another garden that more people will come in later on. Um, but it takes a sophisticated people to do that. And I think that if you're able to create man-made gardens like that, you're probably also creating gigantic civilizations, which we know that they did. In the Mato Grosso region of Brazil, or Brazil near Bolivia, the Xingu River, we know that there were cities there that had the same population as the height of ancient Rome. There were 1 million people living there, and they can judge that through, a variety of different factors. But there were gigantic, huge, influential civilizations in the Amazon long before Andean civilization, which Andean civilization is Coral Supe that I just showed you. Then it gets to Shavin de Wantar, and then continues through a variety of cultures until you get to the Inca. That's all along the Andes Mountains. That is just west connecting to the Amazon. But I think that
mhm,
they are sparked. They're basically kicked off because they have contact with the Amazon, and we see on their ceramic pottery they start using symbols that you see in Amazonian pottery that's even older. So you can see the Andes cultures are being influenced by them. So I think that there is a long lost ancient influential culture that probably had stonework. I mean, there's a couple places now just within the last few years that have been discovered in the Amazon. Just as you fall out of the Andes and begin going into the jungle, there's megalithic architecture that's being found just in the last couple years out there. And so I think maybe one day, I don't know if in my lifetime, but there will be a civilization, or at least a city that's discovered that is producing all of these things in an extremely rich and biodiverse area in the Amazon. So, anyways, that's my whole spiel about ancient South American history.
and I bet it's full of ancient stone carved vases that are of a similar. I
I would
bet
love
that
that.
because those vases are from like 10,000 BC, and I bet if you could be like making stone like that, yeah, I just
you know what You know what I just remembered now that you said that? I've got to
Yeah.
send this to I got to send this to my computer, and I'm going to pull this up, and I'm going to show you guys some photos. We're probably going to have to
Yeah.
do a part. We're probably going to have to do a part 2 now of ancient Peru
Let's
because
have a bring and
there's a lot.
share show and tell, sorry. Show and tell of your Peru
Yes, yeah. So
expedition.
I'm gonna drop this one more photo in here that I just sent to myself because you said stone vase, and I saw something there that
Mhm.
really surprised me.
Go
Let's
for
go.
it.
All right, guys, I'm just pulling something out of my Gmail real quick. All right, so let's save this. Save image. All right, here we go. Open my file. Aha. Open this up. Okay, and then present.
Right.
Share screen. Watch, my camera is going to pause again. That's fine. All right, everybody can see me. So
Yeah.
I was going through the Inca Museum
Ooh.
in Cusco, and look what I found. It is a green granite, unfinished vase that some ancient person in South America was working on. How weird is this?
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like someone said it looks like an ashtray. It does. It's yeah, because it's a weird it's a if I was going to make an object out of stone, I would not pick granite. Mate, that's hard. You'd be there for years. Like you said, it's 2 years for that guy to make a replica attempt at a vase. I'd get bored. I'd give up. I'd
Yeah,
give up. After a month, I'd give up. I'd be like, this is boring.
yeah,
Like, let's make it out of a like nice, softer. I think you don't need it to be that hard. You just need it to hold something. If its purpose is for holding something.
yeah,
But
yeah. So
yeah,
this,
it is, and
so
it's weird that it's got the two. Yeah, it looks like a melted version of a pre-dynastic
yeah.
vase.
It's a it's a version that hasn't been it hasn't been obviously completely carved. It hasn't been perfected. It's still kind of just, and it's like whoever was making this at some point was like, oh my God, I can't keep doing this. I need a
Yeah, it
softer
looks like
stone to make the vase better.
someone tapped out, or somebody. It's like someone tried to attempt to make a. This was the science mythbusters version of
Yeah.
the pre-dynastic ones. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. It's very similar. So, okay. So I'm going to start clicking right and left through these. I don't
Interesting
know
though.
what's going to come up next, but we'll just go through them as I go. So here is the 12-sided stone. This is the Temple of the Moon, I believe, in the city of Cusco, just down the road from my hotel. Absolutely gigantic stone. This is gray andesite, which is similar hardness to granite. You can see that there's a couple little nubs up above it, I'm sorry, this is either 12-sided or 12-cornered. Let me count it. 1, 2, 3,
It doesn't
4,
look
5,
real.
6,
Looks
7,
like
8, 9, 10,
AI.
11. Yeah, 12. It's 12-cornered stone. Yeah,
Yeah,
it really is strange, and there's a nub at the bottom of it too.
of course there is always a nub.
This wall right here was
Mhm.
probably about 20 feet tall, and I want to say it's at least a couple hundred feet. It's at least a couple 100-foot walk all the way around this temple, and it's a one of its kind in Cusco. There really is not any other building in Cusco that's built quite like this. They all have this kind of architecture. So let's do a little lesson of different types of stonework.
Yeah.
So this is megalithic polygonal stonework in Peru. This here is imperial style. So they're not uniform. They're all different shapes and sizes, but they have very similar features. They're all relatively squared. Um,
This is what the walls of the Assyrian look like. The original walls that
yes.
haven't been flattened. This is what
Yep.
the Assyrian limestone.
And so what we're looking at right now is actually the interior of a building that I saw inside a hotel. So the walls of Cusco were just too monumental for the Spaniards. The Spaniards tried to take down the city of Cusco
Mhm.
in the mid 1500s, and they just couldn't do it because the blocks were too tightly fit together and too large.
Yeah.
So they just built the city on top of it, And then
Mhm.
in 1650, about 120 years after the collapse of the Inca Empire, after the conquering of the empire, a huge magnitude 8 earthquake just knocked down the entire Spanish city of Cusco and left the megalithic uh, Peruvian walls standing underneath. Then they
Ha!
re- then they rebuilt the Spanish city, and then in 1950, a magnitude 9 earthquake came in and knocked down the modern day city and left the Peruvian walls standing. So the Peruvian walls, they hardly fell apart. Um, so it's amazing. It's amazing stonework, and we're gonna see lots of different variations here.
That is
I'm
karma.
gonna
That is
I'm gonna
karma for
skip
those
that.
Spaniards.
So when we're talking about earthquake-proof architecture, this is the Temple
Whoa.
of the Sun, Temple of the Sun or Temple of the Moon at Machu
Uh-huh,
Picchu. I think they
uh-huh.
call it Temple of the Moon, but it doesn't actually have any moon alignments. But
Right.
you can see where this style of architecture was meant to prevent it from falling apart during earthquakes. So Machu Picchu, we know, has endured at the very least 2 earthquakes, massive earthquakes throughout its history. And so another thing that's interesting about Machu Picchu is that 60% of the city's architecture is actually under the ground. It is 60% of the architecture is in the foundation of the city. They shaved off the top of the mountain, completely just flattened the top of the mountain, and then repurposed all the blocks to build a solid foundation and to build the city. And so what you're looking at right now is where during earthquakes, it has caused a corner of the temple to like sink into the ground, but the blocks are so interconnected to each other that even when they fall, the wall still, the
Mhm.
wall still holds together. The wall just kind of flexes. And another way that these blocks are, or that these walls are able to not just crack down the middle, is it's a little bit hard for me to explain here, and it also depends on the stonework. But if we're looking at this, these are good examples. So it's a bit hard to tell from this angle, but these walls actually lean in. They're leaning in about maybe 10 degrees, and the way that they're able to do that is the exterior of the block, say it's sitting straight up, but you have, imagine, you have the two sides, and you have
Mhm.
the top and the bottom side. All of those are tapered in. So if you set that block down, it would cause the block to basically lean back a little bit. And so as you stack these blocks on top of each other, all the blocks are leaned back, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not only on the top and the bottom, but also on the side. So what that causes is this little triangular gap between the left and right sides of each of these blocks. So they
Yep.
come up to, so at the X on the surface, on the surface, they're perfectly connected to each other, like right here.
Yep.
But as they go back inside, the sides separate from each other, from the exterior all the way to the back. It creates this little triangular space
Yeah, it's like
between.
a V. It's like a V
Yes.
between every yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so what they would do, I was on the Snake Brothers. Somebody called it gap fat. But basically they would take alpaca fat and this red mud clay, and they
Yeah.
would make an oily glue that would sit between these blocks.
Mhm.
And they could have made the blocks just perfectly flat alongside each other. But what I think was happening, and this isn't accepted by academia. What I think was happening was that when an earthquake hits, you have this shock wave that goes through the wall, and if all the walls are flattened up against each other, they can all the shock wave running through the wall can cause the blocks to ripple and crack, and so you
Yep.
can have this crack that goes straight down the middle of the wall. But if they're only connected on the surface, and everything else inside of it is separated, and you have this gap fat glue that allows the blocks to move, and wiggle on the inside of the wall, it will keep the wall standing, if that makes sense. It almost makes the
Like a
wall.
like a human body and a skeleton. So we're all like rows of
Sure,
bones,
sure,
but we've
sure,
got like
exactly. But
yeah, that makes
oh,
sense.
wow, wow, great. Yeah, 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 great comparison. Yeah, it's like ligaments between the blocks that allow,
Yeah.
imagine if you had no ligaments between your bones, and you fell off a one-story house. Like, all that pressure where
Yeah.
the joints and ligaments could have been would cause the bones to crack and break.
Yeah, you'd
Um,
smack your all your bones would shatter, but luckily if we fall over, obviously you can break bones, but it takes a lot because a lot of the impact is taken by all the goo and gunk and whatever we are made up of,
yep.
human bodies. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what's happening here at this imperial style stonework. But that's just one of 5 to 7 different styles that you see in the Inca world. I will get to this in a minute, and I'll get to
Whoa.
those. So this is again the Temple of the Moon. So if you look right here,
Oh,
that
yep, yep, at the side, yep, yep, yep.
that is
That's one stone?
yeah, this is all one stone, except you have these 2 little stones that are stuffed in the middle between them. I
Mhm.
don't know, or
What?
in the middle of it. I don't know why, but look at this. All of this right here is one stone, and you have this exterior here that looks like it twists as it goes from the bottom
Yep,
to the top. But
amazing.
all of this is one solid block of granite. And then just next to it, so this block right here is roughly the size, just a little bit smaller than some of the granite pillars that you see at the Osirion. Those
Yeah.
ones that are sitting straight up, it's just a little bit smaller. I'd say maybe 2/3 the size of that of those pillars. Like those pillars probably come out about this big, so it's probably 2/3 the size
'Cause
of
that
the mass.
Whoa, 'cause that to me, I'm an aesthetics girl, and that to me just looks really weird. Like, why have you got these like random massive ones at the bottom?
Mhm.
I just like them to be all look the same, thank you. I don't care if they're big or small, just can they all be the same? It looks really weird.
It
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 look
it i it is really strange. I don't understand the purpose of it. It's all masterfully done, and it looks like to me that, that to me, it looks like the same people who did here. It looks like the same people who erected this could have also done these, but, um, why go from
Why do that? Yeah, like
larger to
it
you
just
know?
looks weird. It looks like you started a design and then it looks like
Yeah.
someone like another design, and then a designer quit, and then another designer comes in and gone, no, we're going to go small today. It looks like too I just think it looks really ugly.
Well, and what else is interesting is this is an exceptional temple in the Maya world. Usually they don't look like this, where you have these huge megaliths sitting, on
Mhm.
it's basically like the shoe molding of the of the temple. Usually they're more uniform from the bottom all the way to the top. So this is me,
Yeah.
Temple of the Moon. This is in Cusco. This is Machu Picchu. Um, so this is at the bottom of that Temple of the Sun, what I was just showing you at Machu Picchu. This is down on
Yeah.
the outside. So
Yeah.
much less precise, but you have this this is megalithic polygonal stone architecture here, but not as precise as when you get up in. So if you were to climb up this and crawl inside this temple, you would
Yeah.
end up where I was just showing you.
Right, right,
Um,
right. I see you. I see
so
you.
this is much more imprecise here. And so you can see here where it's flattened. So this whole mountain looked like all of this right here, and they actually just flattened all of it, took the stone, and then built this, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Mhm.
And you can see my mouse still. Okay, good. So here is up at that Temple of the Moon. This is if I were to climb up through those windows above this woman, I'd be standing here looking at this. Here's another view. This is off to the right. Sorry, PC kind of makes my photos folders like disorganized from the way I had it on Mac. But this is where those blocks were falling apart and kind of flexing away from each other.
Mhm.
This is the right side of it. So you can see you have this gigantic stone here with this lip here for some reason. And then you have these 2 blocks that are cutting down the center, just like over here on this other side. Um, but why exactly they have this gigantic granite stone on the bottom half of this wall is just
That if you just removed all the top stuff and just let's just look
Mhm,
at the bottom massive granite brick thing,
mhm.
that looks like something you'd find in ancient Japan. They have these
Ah,
amazing,
yeah.
massive megaliths that are kind of like it's got those weird sides where they're not any kind of shape that I know how to name in my maths vocabulary,
Mhm,
and they've got weird like diagonals and then like sort of squarey nubs and hexagony. It looks like, if it was standalone, it looks like some ancient piece of Japanese megalithic rock that someone has then gone, I know, we can make this fit. Well, don't worry, we'll make it fit, babe. What we'll do is we'll build on top of it, and we'll make it look like a house. But it's very odd.
It's like they like they made the blocks fit around it, and they just use this massive stone in their own building.
Yeah, in their own design. Be like, do you know what? We've got this massive stone. We can't move it. What we can do is we can just incorporate it into the design, and that's like really clever. And they've done it beautifully.
Oh my goodness!
But it's just a weird design, and it's like for all the work, it's like we can still obviously see that there's a massive weird shaped block in your design, and it doesn't.
It is so weird, and there's so many different examples of them using very strange natural features in the rock to build a temple. You just reminded me of another example that I am having to send to myself right now, because I'm gonna put it in here and show you guys. There is a really strange granite outcropping at Machu Picchu that they use for their temple, and they call it that they use for a temple that they call the Temple of the Condor. But I'll keep going through this. So this is the Temple of the Moon.
Yes, look at that.
So you see these huge irregular stones. Look at this. They carved this little niche in there. They think that maybe that was just for a wood log that beams the top of the temple, where they would
like
lay
a lintel
over. Yeah. So you had these thatch roofs that would go over the temple. But if you look at this right here, this is one of these. This is an example of where people look at the disparity between the stone architecture at Machu Picchu that looks like multiple different cultures, because all of this down here, this megalithic, precise, polygonal stone masonry, maybe in an area like that where they're a little bit separated and have shaken apart during earthquakes, you could fit something in between there. But here, they kind of pillow out. But as you get down into where these cracks actually meet, you can't pluck a hair off of your head and put them between these blocks. They fit that closely together, especially about right here.
Just to clarify, though, I'm talking like Orthodox. This is all supposed to be Inca of the same period, right? This is all supposed to be original design made in one go.
Yes, yeah. This was all made. This was all built by the Inca over the course of about 100 years. Is what is thought. It is all one culture.
I'm sorry. I really struggle to like get on board with someone looking at this like that, going, it's clearly, I can see clearly 3 different styles, 3 different designers. I can see 3 different artists work here, and like clearly it's like if I was looking at a house that's had a modern extension, an original foundation, and like a revamp somewhere in between the two. Like you can, but yet they're going, no, we've looked at the history, and this house was built in 1840, and I'm like, yeah, but it has clearly got a modern extension on the back. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like if you don't know how to cut and place stone, what do? You build the walls, which are like pebble, like rubble walls, I call them, when you just kind of you stack them and like stand back and hope for the best. That's clearly what's going on at the top, and they're arranging them in a shape that mimics the other side. But clearly there's this like the big off beast that's on the corner, and then you've got all of the arranged stone. I see 3 artists there, and if anyone can't see 3 artists, I worry about your eyes.
I agree with you that there is something wrong with this here. I don't know what the answer to it is necessarily, but there's something wrong with this, because this is the most important part of Machu Picchu. I think I have a temple, or I think I have a photo in here. So this is showing you the majority or a half of the city of Machu Picchu. So you can see down here you have this imperial style architecture, but the majority of it is rubble and mortar. Like look at all this rubble and mortar.
Like
all of these. Yep. All of these are rubble and mortar cities. But then you also have this. This is cellular polygonal. I don't believe that that's granite. I think that is limestone. It looks like limestone to me. There's a lintel there. I have a photo here somewhere. If it actually came through from my Mac. Man, it's a photo that, you know what? This is what Google Earth is for. We're going back.
It's just, I've never, it's just, I find it really, I find it really baffling and frustrating. I'm like, are your eyes not seeing what my eyes are seeing? I see somebody who knows how to make the big boys and somebody who doesn't.
Mhm.
And I find it really difficult to understand how we can just go, oh yeah, but they were all same people. I'm like, why
It's
would you why would you not finish?
Yeah, it's very tough to make sense of. Okay, I am going to okay, stop
Well,
sharing this.
it makes I mean, logically, I mean, just going. I don't care
Mhm.
about timelines. I don't care. Like I'm not precious to any particular timeline. But logically, it looks like somebody who wanted to restore and renovate something that they were super old, but they just didn't know how to renovate. They didn't have the knowledge to renovate it to the original design. So they were
Yeah.
like, do you know what? All the original design was out of fashion. They were like, we hate big stones. No, you're not cool if you have a big stone house. It's all about these little stones now. That's what my neighbor's got. So like it was like it was out of vogue. It was from a different epoch. It was either not cool or they didn't know how to do it. One or
Yeah.
the other.
Well, and I totally understand the approach of when people look at Machu Picchu and you look at the different styles of architecture. It's very easy to initially see that this is clearly different cultures, at the very least, different styles of stone masonry that are building these temples. And that are building the massive granite megalithic precisely cut stonework, and then the rough rubble and mortar that surrounds it and sits on top of it. You look at it and you're like, well, this looks like the megalithic stonework was here first by an earlier culture, and then someone came and just built on top of it the best they could to preserve it. I totally understand that. The issue for me came up when, and I just realized it just from standing here. So you arrive at Machu Picchu down here,
Yep.
and
Yep.
then I
Wow,
took a
that is
photo.
high up.
Oh, it is. Yeah, yeah.
Whoa.
I took a photo standing from right here. Now the city is not actually leaning off the side of the mountain like this. But all of this here is my mic messing up as I'm doing this or no?
No?
Okay, okay. So actually, I bet you somebody took a photo for us.
Just look how high up they are. That's mad. You're on a knife's edge of a. Well, we're on the top of the mountain, and it's like you're on a knife's edge.
I'm gonna see if I can't find a better one. Man, so many people have been here. It's glorious.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Perfect. All right. So all of this right here is rubble and mortar. Like, see how this is just all thrown together? There isn't
Yep.
precise stonework here.
Yeah. Pebble dash.
All of the rest of the city right here is rubble and mortar. Sometimes it's cellular stone masonry where it's kind of roughly cut. It looks similar to the granite polygonal, hyper precise stonework, but it just isn't the same. The only place in Machu Picchu where you see the type of stonework that ends up on YouTube videos is this little spot right here, where I was showing you where those blocks are falling apart. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
right
Yeah.
there. So you have
Okay.
these
So
3 walls. This
wow.
is
So
the
it's like 1% of Machu Picchu.
yes, it is only this right here. And then so I look at that and I think like, okay. All right, if I'm going full Atlantis mode here,
Yep. Go on. Go
does
wild.
it
The what
does
if?
it make sense that Atlantis came all the way out here into the Peruvian Andes and built this one temple? And all right, I'm gonna go right here.
I mean, that
And
is
they
pretty
and and they built
remote.
and they build this one temple right there.
Yeah.
That's the one exceptional place. Or is it some other answer that I'm not thinking of yet? You know, that for some reason the Inca or whatever Peruvian, culture was able to do this, and yet oh Lord, let's get closer.
I mean, I would
Here we go.
say if these are the remains of something that was there before the rubble and mortar crew arrived, what if this is the only surviving remains, and that's why it's the only
Mhm.
one? So originally there was like dozens of all of this, but they are either under sediment yet to be found,
Mhm.
or they were destroyed, or they were able to be removed down. And this was the only one where they
The
were
only
like
thing that survived.
where they were like, wait, let's not take them down.
Mhm.
We'll just incorporate them. That doesn't look too bad.
Sure.
Or they did this and then they went, mate, it looks awful. Take the other
Yeah.
ones down. Like, I don't know. It's a I feel like I feel like this is the maybe this is just the only surviving little segment. If
Mhm.
it's the only the 1%, maybe they were like, stuff it. Let's just build around it then. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't feel like that's come from the same brain as the
Well,
rubble and mortar people.
yeah, well, I mean, it's certain. Oh gosh, where did I just go?
Because the rubble and mortar thing, it looks really nice. It looks unanimous. It's got a theme. We're on theme. We're on aesthetic. But
Yeah,
this is just it's weird.
I just went somewhere in Machu Picchu. Oh, that was on the back side of this temple. Here, I'm gonna crawl. I'm
I
gonna
love that
walk.
you can just walk around Machu Picchu on Google Earth. If no one's done this, if you're bored, just give it a go. It looks great.
So this is that temple of the three windows. See that big architecture that's there? These
Yeah.
big, huge stones with these knobs, and
Uh-huh.
then
Uh-huh.
you have that sitting up there. But then what's sitting up here is noticeably different than this. Like, I will say that I think that I can see this whole temple being
Mhm.
that's the same. I could see that being the same architect. For whatever reason, these are. I mean, look how perfectly these are laid to each other. But
Yeah.
this here is different than this. And then that does not look like the same architect is building this roof facade right here, if that makes sense. Actually, I should say this whole temple here does look different than this one. It's just look at how many. Okay, if I put it in this frame, look at how many different styles of stonework you can see at Machu
I know.
Picchu in one
It's a
frame.
mess.
You have,
It's everyone. It's a party. It's every style.
by the
Maybe
way,
this
this
was
is this
the
is that
showroom.
terracing. This is that terracing that I was talking
Oh,
about.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
This goes to the bottom of the mountain all the way down to the
Oh,
river. So you can see it.
that's insane.
I bet you if we look close enough, we'll see ancient terraces out there.
It's
So terracing comes up here. So as I just scroll in this one area, let's
yep.
look and see. So, all right. So that's one. This down here is two different styles of stone masonry.
I think I personally see three. I personally see three.
So you see, so then there's, oh, really?
Yeah.
Here
Go
you
to
do
the
on
go, go,
the
go to
temple?
the other side of the wall.
Where?
Run around the wall. Stand in the middle of the
Oh
structure.
gosh. Well,
Just over
the
there.
problem is, the
Oh,
problem is
your
that,
the photo that you showed before, I
oh
personally
no.
saw three. I saw massive Japanese megalithic weird shaped blocks that people had built that they'd incorporated into it. There we go. So you see the bottom layer,
Mm-hmm.
that massive blocks that are on the floor
Yeah.
that don't really seem to fit the blocks that are on top of it. So I see
Mhm.
layer number one, I see the massive, I'm going to call them Japanese weird shaped megalithic blocks. That's one artist that I see in my mind. Then I see the really well cut, like
Mhm.
smaller megalithic, maybe
All
can't
these
call
up
them
here.
megalithic. Yeah. And they are no mortar, they've been
Mhm.
precisely cut, and they've been able to imitate the diagonal line that are found on the massive megalithic blocks. And they've gone,
Mhm.
right, let's incorporate this into our design, and we'll kind of match
Mhm.
it, and we'll use our skills at stone cutting to create a diagonal line, because we can't cut it out of one big one. We forgot how to do that. Then I see the higgledy piggledy
Mhm.
pebble dash builders who know how to make shapes by taking loads of different weird size like that, and they go, we can try and replicate. So can you see my three
Yes.
different designers? And
Yep.
that's why I think there are three. I think that the base layer is number one, and then I think there's number two, adapt it using the base layer, and then I see number three is copying the top layer.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I agree with you.
they're three designers.
Let me see if I can get a better. There we go.
Exactly that. Exactly on that side. That was your picture, and I see at I see three different people there. The one that the guy that made the cornerstone, or girl, maybe it was a girl. You got the person who made the cornerstone, the person who made the windows, and the person who made the top.
Yep. I agree with you. They are different. They are different styles. I mean, look at that. That's amazing. But what I think is interesting is look at this wall, right? Just this right here, and then turn and look at this. Like it's just amazing to me that like even the architecture there is different than it is there. And then you turn to your right. What the hell is that?
Yeah, and see this is something, there's no way that is not the same, that's not the same designer as the person. I'm going to bring up I know we do like starred comments at the end, but I did think that the guy brought up a good one. He said, what is Dr. Barnhart's opinion of the weird of the all the different styles? Because
yeah, he doesn't know what to think of it. I mean, he's going to say that all of this was built over the course of a century under the command of the king Pachacuti or the emperor Pachacuti. But he thinks that he thinks that they were created, and that the perfect corners and flat sides that were put together, he thinks that this was done using an acid that comes from the Chilean desert in the Atacama Desert, and that the Inca were going down there and using acids to soften the edges of the stones before they place them on top of each other, that allow the stones to fuse together to have this perfect this perfect construction. That is not an idea accepted by literally anybody. That's his own. That's his own idea, and I actually agree with him. And there's other people that agree, but the vast majority of academics think that that's very outside the realm of likelihood. I talked to him. We stood right here, and we were looking at this, and I was pointing out the different styles of architecture, and he thinks that the different styles of architecture indicates they're probably intertwined with whatever that temple's purpose is, or the monumentality, or how important it was. There was an extra effort. He's like this one area that we're standing, there was an extra effort put into these two temples for some reason, because look through there. All of that is this rough construction, just actually not actually like this.
No, I think
the rest of the city
they've got it. I think they've got it the wrong way around. It's not like they put extra effort to make this one different. I think this was seen as extra special because it was there, and it was older, and it was different. Yeah. Like you revere, like there's a reason why we look at Stonehenge and go, "Wow, this is so amazing. This is older." Yeah. It's not like that's like saying that modern day London and Stonehenge was all built at the same time by the same people, but they put extra effort into Stonehenge and made that extra big for some reason. And they're like, no, that's why we think Stonehenge is awesome, because it's older and it's a revered site. I 100% think that this is like the Holy of Holies, because this is where the stones of the gods are, and this is where, and they're going to build on top, they're going to try and rebuild it, or or reconstruct the ancient. I think it's the other way around. Rather than them going, they paid extra special attention to this one to make it really cool. I was like, no, I think this was cool because it was from some mystical, they couldn't explain it.
Yeah, I spoke to an archaeologist. Actually, I think I was standing right here, and there was a little archaeologist that was there with us, and I told her, I was like, you see that stone standing right there? I did some loose measurements, and I was like, I think there's only one place in the ancient world that has granite man-made stones bigger than that, and it's the Osirion in Egypt. And I said, I asked her, I said, there there are people out there that think that this area of Machu Picchu, this stonework, existed long before the Inca ever got here. And I was like, as far as you know, is there any evidence of a pre-Inca civilization? And I was so surprised. She told me yes. She said 2 to 3,000 years before the Inca, they have evidence of people living up here on this mountain. And going back to the top of Machu Picchu, there's something up there. Up here, there is a spring that pours out of the mountain and comes down through the city here. And there's these rivers that are running through the city. And she was telling me that this spring, they have evidence of people being at that spring up to about 3,000 years ago.
Mate, okay, that's weird you say that, because the one thing that ancient stonework and ancient granite with quartz in, the one thing that you need to, like, for the science to start happening and the alchemy and the stuff, you need moving water. It's the thing. When you have when you have quartz granite, which is 50% quartz, which you can charge, that's when you can get piezo electricity. The one magic ingredient you need is moving water for cavitation. That's when you can start doing stuff. So that makes complete sense. If there was a society that was there in a different epoch that was running cavitated water, and they were running it through or around granite, then you can activate it. There is a science there that we're just sort of getting into, and it makes complete sense in my mind. Okay, there it is. And then you've got because it has to have the water near it, like the Assyrian, like the pyramids, like it needs running water around the granite. There's a reason why you drag granite to the top of the mountain. There's a reason why you drag it to the Giza plateau. It's because you're using it.
Yeah,
because it's not that pretty granite.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna see if I can.
It's not that nice.
See if I can't show you where this. Oh,
that's so amazing that she said that. So did she give you any? Is there any papers on that, or any like reference? Because that's something that we need to be.
I'm positive. I'm positive that there are, and I have found some. So this is the top of Machu Picchu here. This is the top of the mountain, and so they have these springs that run down from the mountain into the city. And there's these little rivers that they have go through here. Now with the modern day tourist stuff on top of it, it's kind of hard to track where the river was, but there's a river that runs right underneath all these buildings somewhere down here. And if I searched and searched, I might be able to show you where exactly it is. I want to say it's over there. But you have water running through the center of the city. But I mean, so you see all this rough stonework? Yeah. It's that part right there. It's the only place in the whole city that looks quite like that.
Okay, here's a question, just throwing it out there. How do we know? Because have they done any LiDAR scans on? Because obviously there's loads of different levels with Earth in between this. How do we know that there isn't any more massive megalithic stuff under?
Oh, they know that they know that there is. They just don't. Machu Picchu is one of these places that, like, it gets so much tourist attraction. I think that they don't like to carry out huge excavations anymore to disrupt
they couldn't.
The flow of the traffic.
Because I'm going with the theory, like you said, it's really weird. There's not going to be one. There's no way that there's just one massive megalithic thing. I think that's just the one that they reused and recycled and built on, and then the other ones, they're going to be under there somewhere. They're going to be like, no, we're not going to, they would have built their city over it.
So there's that temple with the 3 windows. I'll just call it temple with 3 windows. It's the most iconic part. All right, right here, there was an excavation going on while I was there. Wow. And they did pull a megalithic stone out of the ground here that was the same size as the big one over in this temple. They pulled one out of the ground. This
You
is
know what?
this is
Well,
last
there we
week
are.
I found it.
I called it. Why are they not bringing on these sites? I've sorted it, guys.
Well,
Fully joking. I'm not.
you have good
Go.
intuition.
But I mean, my imagination goes there, and because I'm allow myself for my imagination to go in any direction. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. No shame in it. I'll just put my hands up and be like, whoopsie. But it just, like, logically, it just makes sense. Like, think like Sherlock Holmes, and you're like, well, it makes no sense that there's just one. It makes no sense that you'd start making a building and then change the design. So it's just like, it's Sherlock Holmes logic. There must be more. Then this is the only one surviving that we've found. But so whereas the other ones, they got to be under there.
Under and you know, there are other places. This is what's really strange is, so throughout the Inca world, you have lots and lots and lots of buildings that look like this, obviously. But you have very few that look like the Temple of the Three Windows. And you have at Ollantaytambo, you have one location of that site that has that type of masonry. At Pisac, you have one part of that site that has that type of masonry. And then in Cusco, you have one site that looks like that part of that masonry. And so it's so strange that you have so many of these temples that stand out from everything else around themselves, kind of isolated in these different cities. There's a big mystery there, and I don't know exactly what the answer is. Another thing that's interesting about Machu Picchu is, like, you know, in the Maya world, something I would immediately turn to is, well, okay, so the bodies that are found here, what do the bodies carbon date to? And is there a puzzle that we can unravel here? Like, you know, if there was a body directly underneath this temple, buried underneath it, you could carbon date that body and you would know that body had to be buried before that block was laid on top of it, you know, most likely. So, but there isn't anything like that. And the original excavations at Machu Picchu were carried out by Hiram Bingham on behalf of Princeton University, I believe. And he did all these secret excavations, and he carried out 70 huge crates and took them back to the United States. And those crates are still sitting in the basement at Princeton. And we don't know what the containments of those were. And he denied that he actually had those 70 crates shipped out. So we don't know how old the bodies were that he.
Oh, he found bodies. He did find bodies.
Oh, yeah. He found bodies. And there were even parts in the city. So this is, we know that later Peruvians, they were at least using we know that they were creating some, but they may have been using some pre-existing. See these terracings? These go all the way down to the bottom. So have you ever seen those niches? Have you ever seen those niches in Peruvian architecture that are, well, here's a simple example I'll show you. So sometimes they're really small and sometimes they're a lot larger. These doors to nothing. Have you ever seen these doors to nothing that are in Peru? They're all over the place. So
the trapezoidal frame. They're also in Barabar in India.
Yep. And so So in Peru, when the Spanish found a lot of these niches, what they were being used for at that time was to store mummies. So people would take, you know, their ancestors and they would sit them in these niches, and it was like a sacred cubby, you know, for these bodies. Now there were bodies like that, not in these little cubbies, but there are human-sized cubbies found in other places in Machu Picchu, like down at the bottom of this cliff through the window. And there were mummies in there, and all of those were taken as well. So there's later on, when Peruvian archaeologists came through to Machu Picchu, it was basically naked in the way that it is today. Like, all of the artifacts that were sitting in all of the buildings, all of the bodies that were buried here, all of that had been excavated, put in crates, and sent back to Princeton, and the vast majority of it has never seen the light of day. So we have no idea exactly how old the bodies from Machu Picchu are, or if they could be carbon dated, if they've ever been carbon dated. The context is just totally removed, and
Hmm.
it kind of puts us in a place now where all we have is speculation now.
Yeah, that's mad. Because, well, okay, but I mean, yeah, you can speculate, but I see three designers. I see three different artists doing their thing,
Yep. Yeah,
and
I agree.
that's
I agree. And it's like that all. Oh, here's an
yeah,
overhead. So it's,
yeah.
yeah, it's like that all. I mean, look at that.
There's three.
This is-
Three different. Yeah, it's wow.
So,
Machu
well,
Picchu.
there's so much more to go through, but we could be here all day doing this. Let me try to see
But
if I
yeah,
can get
this
my
is good.
camera.
Okay, we're coming up to the 2 hour mark. Well
Uh,
done, guys. If you're still with us, we are going to come to your star comments because I want to make
yeah, we
sure
just got
anybody who's
make a
done a
couple of them.
star.
Let me see if I can reset my camera real fast.
Oh yeah, because you're a little bit frozen, but um amazing. And just to say, like, because my friends who went to Peru, they said they really struggled with the altitude and the altitude sickness, and they needed like
Mhm.
oxygen, and it was everyone felt like really ill. But you didn't experience that.
No, I was really anal about preparing for that, and so I took I took all like the
Oh, and he's gone. We'll wait for Luke to pop back in. The what we stream through does not like it when we pull screens up and put them back again. So until Luke comes back, I will answer. Oh no, Luke's coming back. I'll
all
wait,
right.
Derek. I will get back to your question. It's a very good question.
There we go. I'm
Right.
slowly figuring out how to fix this issue. I'm sorry. Okay?
That's all
So
right. We were just chatting. It's fine. Keep going, Luke.
so what I was going to say about the altitude is what I was going to say about the altitude is I was really nervous that it was going to hit me hard and that I wasn't going to be able to enjoy my time. So uh I bought like all the cocoa leaves I could find, and I was chewing on them all the time. And cocoa leaves have caffeine, and the caffeine thins your blood. And so having thinner blood
Mm,
makes it a little bit easier on you at that high altitude. So
yeah.
we arrive in Cusco, it's 11,500 feet. And I don't know what I am in San Antonio, like maybe like 700 feet elevation. And,
Mhm.
and, I walked like as fast as I could. We had this meeting and I needed to go see this store that I've been wanting to go to. So I walked as fast as I could and even ran from one side of Cusco to the other in like 30 minutes. And that was exactly what we were advised not to do. Um, I got a pretty bad headache my first night there. Consumed, I don't even know how much caffeine I consumed while I was there. It had to be like several hundred milligrams per day, like 500 milligrams. And usually I'm like a
Nice.
200, usually I'm like a 200 milligram per day person.
Okay.
But no, it had to be more than 500. It was like 800. But anyways, and I would take ibuprofen, and I'd take like 500 milligrams of ibuprofen every morning, and I'd take some before I went to bed. And I never had altitude sickness other than a bad headache the first night I arrived in Cusco. So I was able to kind of avoid that. And by my last day, I was like totally fine. I didn't need altitude medication or anything like that. So
Amazing.
um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Actually nobody on our trip, uh, the altitude really affected them. There were some older people who were kind of tired, like during some points where we needed to be at the bus in like 5 minutes or something, and we had to walk like 200 yards. People would be pretty winded, just because the air is thinner. But nobody got sick.
Nice. Okay.
So
Cool.
well, anyways, we got a couple starred comments here. So, Ed Fu, thank you for this. And yeah, basically he just, our Dr. Barnhart's a really, really cool guy, but he's an academic through and through. He's got some theories out there that aren't accepted, just like all academics should. But he's going to say it was commissioned by Pachacuti, and that the temple the stone masonry of it is indicative of the fact that it was an important place and it needed to have that kind of stonework for, some specific reason that's totally lost to us today. So that's what he
Right.
would say.
Okay.
All right. And then I'm going to let you do this one.
Derek Ellis says, Johanna, if you were in charge of an excavation and you could go anywhere in the world, and where would it be and why? I would like to excavate more around the Assyrian, like really, because they've done like what they can guess from the LiDAR, but no one's really properly got down around the sides, and also really excavated around the enclosure that the Osirian in Egypt is in. It's deep into the ground, but there's a back wall which I think really needs to be studied. It visually it looks so similar to the enclosure, the limestone enclosure around the Sphinx, and there's like deep weathering. I'm not like an expert on stone weathering, but it looks like water erosion on the back of the Assyrian enclosure. And everyone's so excited to see the Assyrians. And when you go, Luke, next week, when you're in Egypt, please take amazing high-res footage of the stone enclosure towards the back of the Assyrian. Not the Assyrian itself. It's about a couple 100 feet out from it. And at Cosmic Summit, I cornered Robert Schock, and I was like, Robert, you're a qualified geologist. What do you think of the erosion on the enclosure of the Assyrian? Like, is this water erosion? Why does it look so similar to the Sphinx? Do you think it's, and he said, and he was like, yeah, it's good eye. Yeah, I think so too. I think that it could be, obviously he needs to like study it properly, but there's something there. There's something there. If you look at maybe next Raiders, I'll bring a photo of what I'm talking about so that you know. But
Yeah.
so that's where I would excavate. Long story short, I would excavate down and around the Assyrian, because I think that it's just one of the most bizarre, really cool but unstudied parts of Egypt.
I'll have
There's
to
so
call
much.
you. I'll have to call you the morning that we go and talk to you, just so I know what I'm looking at when I get there.
Yeah. Okay, I'll send you what I need. But I'm like, I need good high-res images of it, because personally, I think if you can date, erosion gives you a rough dating timeline, because you can date erosion by
Yeah,
thumb.
sure.
And then you'll have a really good idea of like roughly when the pit of the Assyrian was at least carved out. I think it could be really old. But yeah, so that would be, Assyrian's my favorite location in Egypt, and that's where I would want to excavate.
If I had only one place in the whole world to excavate, gosh, what would I do? I think the Osirian is a good answer. I would probably do like all of Saqqara, I think.
Oh yeah. Or Sahara. Just excavate the whole Sahara.
excavate the entire Amazon. Probably I don't know, like one realistic place that I already know of, yeah, probably Saqqara, like the entire necropolis. I would want to know everything that's there, because I feel like Giza is going to be entirely excavated at some point. They're gonna dig that. I think I was looking it up, because there's the controversy over Göbekli Tepe only being 5% excavated, and I was looking up like what percentage are other places excavated. Machu Picchu was like 30%, Teotihuacan was 6%, but then I saw Giza they say is like 85% of that whole area has been excavated so far. So, but I feel like this is another thing, but I feel like there's a whole big part of Giza that is not accessible to the public and does not end up in textbooks.
Oh, mate.
I'm sure you're well aware of that.
Everywhere you go in Giza, obviously everyone's looking at the pyramids and everyone's looking. There are gated off holes everywhere, tunnels that just descend into like hundreds of feet down.
Yeah.
There is it is a rat run of, it's like an ant's nest of tunnels that are under and in and around Giza. There's stuff that's off limits. There's stuff that's now on like private paid for special permission tours, but there's stuff that it just isn't even in there's a whole underground levels of Giza that are off the charts.
When we were talking yesterday, when we were saying and whenever you and I link up in Egypt, we should do a video. We should do one on the tunnels of Giza and go around and like documenting all those entrances and like marking where exactly they are or whatever. That would be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yusuf Awain's dad said that when he was a child, you could go into the tunnels at Giza and you could go to Saqqara. They're miles long.
Oh, wow.
So that it's interconnected. So the ancient underground Saqqara is connected to ancient underground Giza. And I think there is a whole, in the way that they only discovered Derinkuyu and the underground Turkey cities. I think there's stuff that goes right out into the Sahara that links up. And if you excavated, my second place of excavation in the world would be to excavate all the way along where that ancient river was that ran across the North Africa in 10,000 years ago, because I think you're going to find structures, you're going to find stonework, you're going to find cities, you're going to find, that's where you're going to find it all.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about the tepes, and how there was a new site that was discovered.
There's a new tepe, guys. If you're into your ancient tepe in Turkey, they've discovered a new tepe. Don't know what the name of it is, but they've carbon dated it, and it's come out at 13,500 years old. So it is nearly 2,000 years older than Göbekli Tepe, which is mad, because that's like modern day to the Romans. That's the time difference we're talking about. It's like crazy. So
well, I mean, because it's interesting, right? I mean, they clump it together, they call it a tepe, but it's like, if you built something if you built a building in modern day Rome, and people 13,000 years later would link it together as like, oh, this is another Roman structure. But no,
it's all not. Roman, isn't it? It's all Roman. Yeah, modern day Roman. It's ancient Roman. It's all Roman. But that's crazy. So I mean, I'm waiting until ancient Turkey, and I think that the numbers that the carbon dating is going to keep.
Sure.
I think they were building stone structures and stuff in Turkey. I think in probably the last 20,000 years.
Sure, I would agree with that. And what I was saying about different eras of history before we went live is you have Bronze Age, Iron Age, Stone Age. I would bet you that there is let's use Tepe age for lack of a better term, all throughout the Mediterranean. And this is one place that we see it, but I guarantee you there's other places around the Mediterranean that are stone sites that are going to be discovered that we'll see similarities. And I mean, supposedly we're not able to call them civilizations. I call it a civilization, but I think we're going to see these extremely old 12,000-year-old cultures that are building these monumental stone sites. They're going to get older and older and older, and we're going to keep on finding them all throughout the Mediterranean. And I think there are these different epochs and eras of civilization and culture and stone building that just explodes in these areas, and it spreads everywhere. And for whatever reason, it dies down, and then it happens again, and it dies down, and it happens again.
Cycles of it, and then like small parts of the previous cycle are built upon, adapted into, and that's why it gets so confusing, because you find like one layer of it amongst other stuff. But 100%. Okay, Chuck, thank you for it's Mendik Tepe.
Yep, Mendik Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe, Mendik Tepe. And it just so happens that Turkey was just like a perfect little preservation area. But I think it's ridiculous, the idea that it was only in Turkey that this was going on. People had feet, they could move. People had boats, they could move. Like it's gonna pop up everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. David Chenoweth, thank you very much for the 5 big ones USD. And Jose,
thank you.
Is Tower of Babel the first pyramid? Tower of Babel is second millennium BC. So even by biblical standards, probably the Tower of Babel would not have been what we would call a pyramid. It may have been more similar to like a ziggurat, where you have this four-sided trapezoidal structure with this big staircase that descends down. Could have been similar to that, but I don't know. I mean, I guess we can call anything a pyramid. But even by like traditional archaeology standards, the Tower of Babel was built long after the youngest date of the Great Pyramid.
Yeah, because people, I mean, I'm the same. I grew up like in a religious family, and like I thought the Bible was the oldest book in the world for a while.
Mhm.
Lol. But the tower, like there are so much older civilizations
Mhm.
than biblical times is like quite new still. Quite it's still
Yeah, absolutely.
I still call biblical times like early modern times,
Mhm.
because there are civilizations and texts and cultures and buildings and structures that make biblical times look, because like Moses was around, and we're talking like 600 BC was like when all that was
Yeah, maybe
getting,
maybe
getting
maybe like maybe like 600 years earlier than that, like 1200 BC.
1200, because
The towards the end of the New Kingdom of Egypt.
yeah, and then like that's the new kingdom that's not even the old kingdom, and then you've got
Mhm.
pre-dynastic, and then you've got all of the tepe, like,
Yeah.
so it's, which is thousands of years older than that. So actually, biblical stuff is quite new.
Yeah, well, in Egypt is just like, I mean, it's crazy. Like even of what we know, like rock solid when Egypt civilization existed and they were building things like by the time that Moses comes around, the pyramids had already at least been around for almost 2000 years.
Yeah,
You
like
know,
that's how, yeah, it's crazy when, because people think, oh, the stuff in the Bible is like super old, but like no, we're talking, there was civilizations had
mhm,
come and gone
mhm.
by the time we're talking in that
Yeah,
time.
and Egypt was already kind of descending towards its end by the time that Moses is around. It's just crazy. And we think about that being 3,200, 3,300 years ago.
Yeah.
But just relatively recent in comparison to these guys who had already been around for 2,000 years by the time that Moses is born. Just
Actually,
crazy.
that's a good idea for a video. I might do a video of really visualizing the timeline and going,
Mhm.
that's how old this stuff is, and then there's
Yep.
and compare it to things like biblical things. So, oh, thank you,
Yep. Thank
Shermanator
you for the
Osborne,
last one.
$5 to the Raiders tip jar.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, I think that this is bringing us to the end here. Thank
Yeah,
all you guys so much. This has been a long episode. This is I think
this is
I
our
think
longest
2 hours is
episode.
our longest episode. So yeah. Well, thank you guys all very very much. Johanna, what is happening with you in the future?
Yeah,
In the near
so
future?
well, near future, we're gonna go. We've got the Brothers of the Serpent, the Snakes, are in London
Yep.
this week, so we're gonna meet up with them. We're going a bunch of us going down to the special permission at the Petri Museum to check out the vases and the Petri's goodies. And then yeah, it's basically I did a lot of traveling in the last year, and I'm enjoying being in one place for the moment and just recouping. And yeah, like I'm just gonna work from home for a while, which I'm really happy to do, and I'm gonna live vicariously through you, Luke, because you're off and about. So I'm excited for you to see Egypt for the first time. It's gonna be epic.
I know, I know. So I leave Saturday morning. I drive to Houston, fly from Houston to Istanbul to Cairo. I land at like midnight, and then I have to take an Uber to my hotel, and I spend the first 4-ish days on my own in Egypt before I'm doing a tour with. I'm just actually going on a tour that Told in Stone is leading. You guys should go check him out if you like Roman
Mhm.
history. He's a classicist, and he's basically doing like a Greek and Roman tour of Egypt, which is something I'm interested in. And it was just a tour. he and I are friends, so I'm just going on the tour. And
Great.
but we're gonna see all the major sites as well as some Greek and like later stuff. But yeah, so I'll be there for 2.5 weeks, and I
Be
don't even.
be warned about the trip from the airport. It's quite far away from
Oh
Cairo.
yeah, yeah.
So it's about an hour, and
Mhm.
you've got to drive, and it is the scariest hour of your life driving from the airport into central Cairo. There is no rules on the road.
Oh
Everyone's
no.
driving. Like you feel like you're gonna like I've nearly crashed so many times. The amount of times people have nearly gone under the car or we've
Mhm.
gone in the back of like it's you're there just like clutching. So just be careful, be wary of that. It's not going to be comfortable.
I'm I'm probably gonna do this at like 1 a.m. So
Yeah, so
maybe
it's going to
maybe it'll be not as scary or it'll be a lot scarier. I don't know.
Oh, no, no, no. It's going to be what everyone comes out at night because it's so hot in the day.
Oh God.
Nightlife, everyone's out. Everyone's out. They're hitting the restaurants. They hit there's kids running around at like 11 p.m., 12. I'm like, it's midnight.
Interesting.
Why are they?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they can't go out in the day. It's too hot.
Makes
So
sense.
yeah, night is a busy time. And yeah, just be warned. It's a wild ride taking that trip into Cairo.
Yeah. So I'm excited. It's surreal that it's finally happening. That let me see, it's a Monday. By this time next week, well, depending on what time it is in Egypt right now, which Egypt is ahead of me. So by this time
Mhm.
next week, Egyptian time, I will have seen and been inside the Great Pyramid. How
Woohoo!
crazy is that? I
And
can't believe it's happening.
January, I'm going to try and Luke's going back to Egypt in January, and I'm going to
Mhm.
try and go out and meet you. And we can do some proper raided, like we can do a little raided tour adventure video. Um,
Yeah.
that'd be
Yeah.
so cool.
That's gonna be really, really fun. Okay, last one. This one's for you.
Get on Rogan, you two. Yeah, we would love to get on Rogan. Rogan is a very hard man to reach.
Yeah.
I know that the producers and director of BAM, the Builders of the Ancient Mystery series, the documentaries that I narrate, they are doing a big campaign to get to Rogan because Rogan needs to see the videos because he's all over that stuff. But yeah, it's Rogan. He's so
Yeah.
busy and it's so difficult to. I don't know. It's like getting a Facebook blue tick or something. Like there's no
Mhm.
method to getting one. You just get blessed and get one day. So it's the same with
Yeah.
Rogan,
Yeah, and you know
maybe.
what's amazing is, I've been on Danny Jones. I think the likelihood is one day I'll go on Lex, but like nothing is the staple of Rogan. You know what I mean? There's just, I don't mean to diss Danny or Lex, but I'm just saying it's just
Yeah, it's
amazing. Like,
Rogan.
if you're
Rogan, yeah.
yeah, like if you're on Rogan, it's like a staple of legitimacy that people should I know some people will roll over in their graves and be saying that, but it's like a staple of legitimacy, I don't know how
I
it's become that, but it
I
is.
owe Rogan.
Yeah.
It was watching Rogan in the pandemic that I discovered Graham Hancock and I discovered Randall
Mhm.
Carlson. So like he was my inky for this whole journey.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be a weird ton of events to ever turn up there. But also like the power of Rogan, he reaches so many people. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else has. I think I've got this weird little thing where my name has been mentioned two separate times on two different episodes of Rogan because uh,
No
Bright,
way, really?
Bright Insight name
Uh,
dropped me when he went on, and Randall Carlson name dropped me when he went on. And so I was like,
wow, so cool.
am I like the most name drop person on Rogan? Yet he doesn't know who I am. But even just Randall just mentioning my name in like what, and I think they took a little clip of it and then put it on YouTube. Like I think I got like 20,000 followers. Like people found
Did
my
you
channel
really? Wow,
just from the name drop on Rogan. So I was
that's
like,
so awesome.
that's the power of Rogan. And yeah, if I ever got to meet the
Yeah.
guy, I'd be like, thank you so much for changing my life.
You you know
Um,
you know what I can see happening is when you and I were at the first Cosmic Summit and we were up on
mhm.
the panel and we were up on the panel next to all these guys who've been around for decades, and you
All
and I,
the OGs.
yeah, you and I like look at each other, and we're both like laughing, like, what the hell are we doing up here? I can see that you and I sitting next to each other on Rogan, and as they're
Being like, how do we
setting up
get
everything,
it?
yeah, as they're setting up everything, you and I look at each other and we're like, how the hell did we end up here?
Yeah, it's mad. It's
So
mad. Yeah, just be like, I've never had a stronger imposter syndrome ever than being on like the group stage of Cosmic, up there with like OG people
yeah,
from this community who've been doing this like 20 years. I'm just like, I am not qualified to be up here. What are we
yeah.
doing?
I feel exactly the same way. Every single day, like when we get on, or every time we even get on this and we're talking on Raiders, I'm like, I just have this crazy imposter syndrome. But hopefully, maybe get over it one day, or maybe we won't. Maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah. Let's manifest Rogan. Rogan.
Yeah. We need to do a campaign.
Chuck, just saying thanks, Chuck, for the no. Thanks for helping not pay attention to work today. Sorry, Chuck.
Yeah. Sorry about it, Chuck. Chuck, this is actually my first day of being a jobless degenerate that only does YouTube. So it's my first day
No,
as a full-time
this is your
YouTuber.
first day as a
Yeah.
professional YouTuber. And
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
I've got to admit, like when you're a content creator, it's like there's pros and cons to it,
Yeah.
but there is a never-ending pressure because the internet does not turn off. It doesn't stop. So whereas other day jobs you can kind of clock in and clock out, and there's schedules, and there's like it's accepted that you can kind of just mentally take a break from it. It's a different world when you work here because you have to do that for yourself, and then you always feel like because it's just a 24/7 go
Yeah.
content
Absolutely.
wheel. So yeah, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Enjoy being your own boss.
Yep. Yeah, it's my dad was saying, he's like, congratulations, you quit your job. Now you got to work twice as hard to stay out of it. So
Yeah.
all that
First day of
said,
your real life.
yeah. All that said, I just want to thank everybody who's watching this, all
Yeah.
500 some odd of you. And without you guys, this life wouldn't be possible. I wouldn't have been able to take this leap. And I look forward to many, many more episodes of Raiders. Johanna, it's lovely to have you as always. I'm so thankful for our friendship and for you helping me get on Cosmic Summit. And I very much look forward to the next chapter of this little crazy
Raiders
world
adventure.
that we have stepped into. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Amazing. Well, have fun in Egypt. I'll see you on the other side.
yes, ma'am. What's our outro again?
We don't have one. We always do this.
That's our outro. See you, everybody.